Hello my dear people, you're welcome to the channel. President Muhammadu Buhari has finally sold Nigeria to China, and this is very sad and unfortunate. Okay, before I go ahead to read this news to you guys, I want to encourage you to please support this channel by subscribing to the channel, and also please turn on the notification bell so that every time I drop a video on this channel, you will get notified. Thank you so much as you support the channel. Now, I'm going to read the news to you guys, and afterwards, I would give my honest opinion on this. So please stay tuned. Now, the news says, the Senate has given a speedy approval for President Muhammadu Buhari to borrow 850 billion for the government. Mr. Buhari's letter seeking the loan was read on Tuesday at the Senate plenary. The lawmakers met physically at the National Assembly despite the coronavirus lockdown in Abuja. The loan, which will be sourced from the domestic capital market, is needed to finance projects and programs in the 2020 budget, he said. The lawmakers suspended relevant rules to give speedy consideration and passage to the request. The president's message was conveyed in a letter which was read out by the Senate President Ahmed Lawan at the start of plenary on Tuesday. Part of the letter reads, request for the National Assembly to raise 850 billion naira in new external borrowing in the 2020 Appropriation Act in naira from the domestic capital market. The Senate may wish to recall that the 2020 Appropriation Act provided for 1,594,986,754,000 of new domestic borrowing and 850 billion naira of new external borrowing. These borrowings were to partly finance the 2020 budget deficit of 2,175,885,232 naira only. Furthermore, the Senate may wish to note that external borrowing from the international capital market increases Nigeria's external reserves, provides access to lower costs, as well as avoids crowding out private sector borrowers who also wish to access the domestic capital market. However, recent developments in the global economic environment as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the decline in international oil prices have made it less attractive to borrow from the international capital markets at this time. To ensure that there are adequate funds to finance critical projects and programs in the 2020 budget, I hereby seek the Senate's approval that resolution to raise the 850 billion of new external borrowing in naira from the domestic capital market instead of from the international capital market. However, it remains our intention to access the international capital market when conditions improve to refinance this 850 billion of new borrowing and epitomize the benefits inherent in external borrowing. Presently, the conditions in the domestic capital market are favorable in terms of availability of funds and relatively low interest rates. This course of action is deemed prudent given our current realities. The president also noted that he has directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to make herself available to provide any additional information or clarification which the lawmakers may require. The Senate leader, Abdullahi Yahaya, therefore moved that the Senate suspends Rule 1 of the Senate Standing Order to enable the lawmakers regulate the normal procedure of the consideration and passage of the loan request. This was unanimously adopted in a voice vote. So that's the news, guys, and here is my own opinion. First of all, my question is, why borrow with the intention to still borrow from the international capital market, which we all know is China? And that is why during the maltreatment of Nigerians in China, Uncle Buhari never said a word. If not for the intervention of our ambassador over there and the House of Rep led by Honorable Bajamiala, I wonder what the case would have been. Now, please look very closely at your screen. I'm showing something at your screen right now. Nigeria, Africa's largest oil producer, borrows more from China than any other country. If you're good with graphs, you can see that of Japan, Germany, and France is low as compared to that of China, which is to the tune of over $2 billion. The chart is from Bloomberg and the source is from Nigerian Debt Management Office. However, note that these balances are at the end of March 2019. Chinese credits accounts for 80% of all bilateral lending to Nigeria. Data from the West Africa Nations Debt Management Office show. China provides loans to build railways, power plants, and airports, helping to bridge a huge infrastructural gap in Africa's largest oil producer. However, lending from China makes up only 3% of Nigeria's total debt stock of $81 billion. This is from Bloomberg, dated 5th of August 2019. So if you doubt me, you can go over there and check. Note that this 850 billion naira has not been included though. So internet is for free. Go over there and check. And everything I say to you guys is out there in the internet. Even Forbes, wrote an article about what China is really up to in Africa. Go ahead and read it over there. There is something called debt trap diplomacy. It is a term used as a criticism of foreign policy of the Chinese government. It claims China intentionally extends excessive credit to another debtor country with the alleged intention of extracting economic or political concessions from the debtor country when it becomes unable to honor its debt obligations, often asset-based lending with assets including infrastructure. The conditions of the loans are often not made public, and the loaned money is typically used to pay contractors from the creditor country. Smart African countries like Tanzania rejected a Chinese loan worth $10 billion on the grounds that it is a killer Chinese loan and only a drunkard will accept the terms in that loan, which includes that they would get 30 years to guarantee on the loan and a whopping 99 years uninterrupted lease. Can you imagine, guys? Have you seen how Buhari has finally sold out Nigeria to Chinese? Talk about Gambia. A member of their parliament openly said that the African countries are indebted to their neck. Hence, he stressed on the need for a lean budget, sacrificing salaries and implementing workable strategies to improve the economy and end borrowing. And the bitter truth is that Buhari and his cabal would rather sell Nigeria to China than implement the lean budget strategy. Go and ask Peter Obi. Peter Obi implemented this lean budget strategy in Anambra State during his time as a governor, and it worked for him. So why can't President Buhari implement this same lean budget strategy? Note, I am not being partisan here, okay? I'm only being factual because I want Nigeria to move forward. People like Senator Abaribe, I believe understands what Buhari is getting Nigeria into. But then he can only do very little or nothing about it, which is why he asked that the interests of the neglected, marginalized, and hated Southeast be at least fully included in the borrowing plan, and of which we're not sure if the amendment as requested was made or not. Please watch this video.
Things is so that you can go back and rework this loan and be sure that all parts of the country are taken care of. And you can either do more borrowing if that is what you want to do, or you can also recalibrate and share this this one that you want to borrow, to be sure that all parts are taken care of. These things are questions of sitting down and rejigging your priorities, as it were. At the moment today, we already have a standard gauge line, from Abuja to Kaduna, and we were using it during the time that the Kaduna airport was closed. So you can rework it. You don't just continue to say, let us pour all resources that we have, for which all of us are going to pay for, to one side. So
can we argue, I mean, just a moment,
yes.
Senator, would you fault the argument when they say that this covers all the geopolitical zones of the country?
I think they're being, like I said before, very economical with the truth. And I will clear it. When somebody says, oh, it covers all geopolitical zones, so because you bring a spore that we get to nature, and you bring another spore that we get, but then you say, oh, it's covered. So if the man that wants to go from Aba to Enugu, how does he go? If the man that wants to go from Aba to Makurdi, how does he go? It doesn't cover it. It's just being specious with facts.
So, yes, it does not cover Enugu to Aba.
It doesn't cover
Aba,
all the way to
Makurdi.
It doesn't cover to
But
Lafia, it doesn't cover to Jos, it doesn't cover to Maiduguri.
Is there a rail line going through these areas that you have mentioned?
That is exactly what I'm saying. The rail line is already existing. The Eastern Corridor coming from Maiduguri all the way to Port Harcourt. And what it needs is that it ought to be modernized in the same way. The one that they're doing now, they want to do from Kano to Lagos, is the Western Corridor built by the British too. So what they're doing, trying to do, is to modernize it. And we're saying, why do you want to modernize it, make it on a standard gauge, and the Eastern Corridor, you ignore it and say you want to concession it? The argument is so simple. And like I said, it's a breach of the Constitution.
Just, sorry, there was an interruption there, but just quickly, looking at these lines here and looking at the fact that, there is a Kano, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, Aba, Uyo, Calabar with extension to on a deep sea port. There's also the one going to Warri, as it were. If they made the argument that we're looking at the quickest links to the ports, which you mentioned, the quickest commercial links, it were, maybe from Onne to Aba, as it might be, or Warri to Aba, as it might be, or to Onitsha, would you also fault that argument?
No, I'm not going to fault that, but I can ask a question too. If you're doing Calabar to Port Harcourt, you understand, there's a port in Calabar. There's a port in Port Harcourt. When you're doing a rail line between Calabar and Port Harcourt, you put it as a priority before, don't you think that it is better to do Calabar all the way up into the hinterland, or from Calabar to Aba and then all the way up into the hinterland, than to follow the rail? So the point really is this. The Ministry of Transportation, I think, either in the government of President Obasanjo or so, had a transportation master plan which links every part of the country and with all these other different linkages within the country. When you're going to now take it, even if you're going to take it in sections, make sure that it is done in such a way that the economic benefits will be coming to everybody. My premise is very fundamental, and that is, why would anybody on the Eastern Corridor, coming from Maiduguri all the way down to Port Harcourt, be subject to double jeopardy? You're going to pay for the loan, because it's a federal government loan, so it's the whole country that pays. Then, if there's a concessionaire, assuming you're able to get one, you're going to pay for that concession, because what a concessionaire does is to charge you for the cost of using that asset for what he has invested in that asset. So you pay twice. You pay the general one, then you pay specifically. Of course, the person who is on the Western Corridor that doesn't use this line does not have to pay for the line. That's assuming you can get a concessionaire. But I can tell you that concessionaire is a very new thing that has not even worked very well.
Sorry,
yes.
Senator, just quickly, you keep saying, assuming you can get a concessionaire, yet you argue that that line is very viable. Why wouldn't we be able to get a concessionaire for a line that is viable?
Because we have tried to do concessionairing, and I will give you just only one instance, on the second Niger bridge, and it has proved impossible to do. Very difficult. It's very viable. It links one part of the country to the other part. You're supposed to get somebody and people to jump at it. Where are we today? We have not been able to do that. And so we have to see what criteria did you use to decide that you will borrow. Okay, if that is a very viable line coming from Kano all the way to Lagos, why didn't you try to get a concessionaire? Why be in a big hurry to borrow for it and get the rest of us to pay?
Well, Senator, I think that's a fine place to leave it. You will definitely.
With this, I rest my case because Senator Abaribe has dissected it and explained it on behalf of the Southeast and how this selling out Nigeria to China, how this loan is going to affect Southeast seriously. Please feel free to share your opinions on this in the comment section. I like to read from you guys. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, like, and please share this video. And thank you so very much for watching. Bye-bye.